How can you get in better shape than 99% of people? To reach that point, you will need to have what the 99% don't have, which is a reason to fight. Something inside that gives you a strong inner drive to keep pushing regardless of how difficult the journey becomes. Very few keep that inner drive for long enough, and the reason is because they simply don't use the right source of motivation. We're all about self-esteem, positivity, and feeling good about ourselves, but that is seldom an effective approach. What I want to help you develop in this video is the exact opposite of that. I want to make you scared and anxious about what will happen if you don't act in the right way. See, as humans, we will generally be motivated by two types of forces: negative ones or positive ones. A negative source of motivation is when you're trying to run away from something. You're trying to avoid a certain reality. A positive source of motivation is when you're trying to get somewhere. You're trying to achieve something and get to a certain destination. If you ask most people, they would probably tell you that positive sources of motivation are better and more effective than negative ones. In fact, we live in a society that puts a priority on making children and people feel good about everything and anything, and making them feel good about themselves. It's often people's reflex to tell people that they should try and achieve great things and set goals for the future, but from what I've seen and experimenting in my own life, positive forces don't get me very far. It's always the negative sources of motivation that keep me going for much longer. If you look at most successful people in any area of life, you will realize that their success came from a source of negative emotions: insecurity, dissatisfaction, frustration, controlled anger, and so on. It might have turned into something positive later on, and they might tell you that this positive attitude is the reason they achieved that success, but I can guarantee you that their early success came from a negative place. A different example: when I started going to the gym, there was no positive emotion behind it. I went and kept being motivated for years on end because it was more painful to look at myself in the mirror than to make the necessary efforts to change my physique for the better. Now I'm much more about using the gym for mental clarity, improving my character every single day, seeing how far I can actually take this, but the initial driver of why I started going to the gym was negative. That's what kept me going. You need to understand that as humans we're much more motivated to avoid pain than to feel better. We're pain avoidant by nature, and we are very good at avoiding pain in our lives. So instead of setting goals for where you'd like to get to, why not define which place you would hate to get to and use that as fuel to act in the right way? See, negative emotions are not a bad thing. They exist for a reason, and your job is channeling those negative emotions into taking positive action. These negative emotions should be used, not suppressed, but used as a way to fuel positive action. So now we understand that negative sources of motivation are much more powerful and more potent forces than positive ones. We understand that these will keep us motivated for a much longer time, which is why it's a better idea to make use of them. To create this negative force inside of us, we'll create an anti-vision or anti-goal, which is something I learned from an entrepreneur called Dan Coe. This, if you will, is the exact opposite of a vision or goal. It is the position we would despise to get into. It is the body we would hate to have, the relationship dynamic we would detest, the daily work we would despise, etc. And these things are actually much easier to determine than a vision. In his own words, it's easier to know what you don't want from experience and observation than it is to know what you want from imagination. It's a lot easier to determine what we don't want in our lives, and by determining those things, it also becomes a lot easier to determine what we do want, because it is simply the opposite of what we don't want. The anti-vision or anti-goal we'll define will specifically be focused on health and fitness goals, because this video is still about how to get in better shape than 99% of people, but I won't stop you if you desire to make one for your life in general. So take a pen, take a piece of paper, and get ready. Step number 1, describe your anti-vision. Write down what you would look like, how you would feel, what your day-to-day life would look like, what your relationships would be like if you got to that point, and so on. I want you to go into a lot of depth with this. Be as precise as you possibly can, because the more precise you are, the more you'll be able to visualize it clearly and therefore also feel the negative emotions that arise with it. The first step to creating this seemingly unlimited source of motivation inside of you through negative emotions is becoming acutely aware of what you don't want and where you don't want to end up. As you're writing all of these things down, you should feel uncomfortable at the thought of actually ending up in that place if you take the wrong set of actions. You should feel slightly scared and anxious. This is a sign you're doing it right. For example, I feel very scared and anxious at the thought of becoming very skinny and frail. It's the single position I would hate to end up in the most. If I got obese, I wouldn't mind it as much as if I got skinny to the point where people think I'm anorexic. Now, once you've defined that place and position in life, I want you to think about and determine what a person who represents your anti-goal would do on a daily basis, how they would think, what their belief system would look like, what their characteristics would be, and so on. Define the actions, thinking patterns, beliefs, characteristics, and so on of that person. If I think about my own anti-vision, that person would skip workout sessions, eat way below its maintenance calories, not prioritize high-protein foods, disrupt his sleep schedule by checking YouTube and Instagram at night, jerk off multiple times a day, and many more things like this. By doing this, you'll become acutely aware of what you shouldn't do, how you shouldn't think, what beliefs you should erase out of your mind, and so on. This makes us aware of everything we shouldn't do or have, and maybe by determining those things, you'll realize you're actually much closer to that person or becoming that person than you thought. We know that every successful and unsuccessful person in any area of life got there because of every daily, uninteresting, and unimpressive actions they took up until that point in their lives. A fit person didn't get in shape due to one major event in their lives, but rather the cumulative effect of every decision they made and action they took in their lives up until that point. The same is true for a fat person. They might have been dealt a bad hand, but ultimately they got in the position they're in because of the daily actions they've taken up to this day. So maybe your daily actions resemble the ones of your anti-vision a bit too much, and you're actually on the path to becoming slowly more and more like them. Determining those things is no easy task, but can be very powerful in making you aware of what you may be doing wrong and help you direct yourself in the right direction. By the way, if you have any issues, you're quite confused about how to get in shape, or you need any type of help with building an aesthetic physique, I have a system called the Aesthetic Physique Method which should help you with that. There's a link down below. The third step, which is optional but can be helpful, is creating a fictional character that embodies all these actions, thinking patterns, belief systems, and characteristics. If you've spent any time in the online self-improvement space, you will know of a YouTuber named Hamza. Every of his videos starts with two fictional characters, both representing two extremes. The first is always the one that represents the anti-goal or anti-vision, which he calls Jeffrey. He represents all the actions, characteristics, thinking patterns that we need to avoid at all cost if we don't want to end up like him. The second one then represents the vision, goal, or dream outcome to achieve, which he calls Adonis. He represents the exact opposite of Jeffrey. He embodies all the proper actions, thinking patterns, belief systems that will allow us to achieve the dream outcome. Creating these two characters has, I believe, been a good part of his success because he's creating a very strong storyline. You have the antagonist, the enemy of the story, which we want to avoid being like, and then the protagonist, the hero of the story, which we aspire to be. Every good story needs an enemy, an evil to fight against. There's a reason why every popular movie ever created has a similar structure. People by nature care about fighting against something malevolent or evil. It gives us meaning and purpose in our life. Then this embodiment of characteristics, belief systems, thinking patterns, and actions into a fictional character also helps us visualize it more clearly and associate negative emotions with that specific situation. So what you can do, although it is optional, is create your own fictional character. Give it a name, a gender, a specific look that you don't want. This will represent your enemy, the antagonist in your own story, the person you want to avoid being like at all costs. So once we have all these things, we'll define the exact opposite of that situation or character. What does your ideal physique look like? What does that person do on a daily basis? How does that person think? The reason this must be done is because not only do we want something to run away from, which is our anti-vision, but we also need to know in which direction to run. And as I said at the beginning, once you've defined the worst possible place you could end up in, it is a lot easier to determine where you would like to end up, because it is simply the opposite of your anti-goal. So this should be fairly simple. Your anti-vision character might not go to the gym frequently, not eat healthy the majority of the time, not go to bed on time, and so on. Your vision character will simply go to the gym frequently, eat healthy the majority of the time, go to bed on time, and so on. Knowing what to do is really not that difficult, but now you're aware of what will happen if you don't do it, and you can always use this as a source of motivation to act in the right way. For this, you don't have to create a fictional character, you just have to be aware of what you should do every day to achieve your dream outcome. Preferably, you want to make these behaviors daily so you can very easily turn them into a daily habit. So in this section, I want to give you a way to implement this into your own life so you can remind yourself of your anti-vision or anti-goal every single day. This will be a document you'll print out and read through every single day, which will help you remind yourself of your anti-vision on a daily basis. So all you need to do right now is open up a Google Docs document and get ready to write things down. The first page will be fairly simple. This is just the 4th page of your document. The second page will include the entire description of your anti-vision. What does it look like? What is a day in its life like? How does it feel every day? Make it very clear. On the 3rd page, you want to have a visual representation of that character. Preferably take your time to find a couple pictures that perfectly represent this anti-goal in your mind. Then on the last page, you want to have a series of daily actions that will propel you forward towards your goal. These will be the opposite actions of your anti-vision. And you don't need many actions, you just need the right ones. Now once you've completed that document, you want to print it out and read it every single day with no exceptions. It doesn't matter if you very briefly go through it, the point is to turn it into a habit. Then besides watching the pictures and reading the text, you want to visualize yourself in that situation. Feel everything, every detail, every pain. Feel the touch of your bedsheet, the brain fog from the junk food you ate last night, truly feel how shit your life would feel like. Now, I'm gonna be honest, that force will not last forever, but truly being able to feel negative emotions will help you a lot more as a way to fuel positive action than positive emotions ever will. So that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Leave a like, leave a comment. Now before you leave, I help men build an aesthetic physique, so if you're quite confused about how to get in shape or you need any type of help with building an aesthetic body, I have a personal system called the Aesthetic Physique Method which should help you with that. There's a link down below. If you want to learn about a simple method to use to become extremely disciplined, you can click on this video right here.